Reverend Daniela and her husband, Charles, have been members of Lincoln Park Church for 10 years. And prior to Daniela receiving a district license, because she's the local, she has a local, not local, she has a district license, okay? So she's been with the church for a long time. She now has a district license. Loretta is the co-lead pastor. She's an ordained minister. She's been there from the get. And they had a very close relationship, okay? Her family, very close to the senior pastors, to the point where you see here Reverend Daniela's mom, daughter, and great granddaughter all serve in the church. 4 generations of women, beautiful, serving at Lincoln Park. Another key player here is Daniela's husband. His name is Charles. He's a member of the senior pastor's men's leadership team. He takes care of all the church situations as far as the structures, because there's a couple of buildings. And as far as Reverend Daniela here, you can see some of her functions. She's on track for ordination, very important. She's gonna, like Kendra, thinking of Kendra and how she's gonna get ordained, same thing. She oversees new church members and the discipleship program there. So everything's well, local church license ministered, and then she got her, district license. The situation, and I'm going to zoom this up, I can even speak. I said, did I say zoom this up? I am not good when when you lose track or something and you're not in control. It's just crazy here. So, okay. Reverend Daniela.
You're doing great, Delmy. Just take a moment, relax if you need. And
I am not used to this, but you guys are great. So I'm just glad I have this computer system thing going on. And you're here, Adam, for the techie issues. Anyway, Reverend Daniela, she's a fairly new district licensed minister. She has responsibility for the new church member discipleship program and assists her senior pastors, Brandon and Loretta, with baptisms, preaching. She's also the director of the missions team. Keeping in mind that this church actually has always gotten, I think for the past 11 years, they receive awards because they go above and beyond with missionary funding. I mean, wonderful, wonderful leadership. Soon after receiving her district license, Senior Pastor Loretta started to notice a pattern of behavior in Daniela, lack of engagement, zero participation in any activities. So she went from being this, ha rah 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 moment, I'm with you at the hip, completely lost connection. Wasn't even assisting to any of the women's programs, and there was a lot of programs. The tipping point came when, during a leadership meeting, Reverend Daniela literally lost her temper. Did we lose the share, guys? We lost the share? Okay. So basically, she, became really a wonderful human being, great leader, and track to get ordained, being ordained. The minute, literally within a week that she got her district license, she was started to be called Reverend. She definitely started to, there was a track, there was a pattern there of just the way she handled herself. So definitely the submission component, right? The component of being obedient and, empower. Remember we're talking about the celebrity pastors? When people get, not that, just when there's power involved, these are the kind of things that happen. And this is definitely the case here. What started to happen is that she really did not, and the reason I'm bringing all this case up is because I sit in a couple of different boards, and this was a tricky one because she was tracking for ordination. So what do you do, right? What do you do with a situation like that? You could go south. It can go south really quick, and that was part of the issue. And the outcome we'll see in a minute. Okay, this is coming now. Any questions, guys, as this is coming through? Here it goes.
So the stage is set. She's on track for ordination. She's district licensed. I guess I'm not exactly clear. What's the situation you're referring to?
Okay, we were getting to the climax of the situation when all this happened. I'll share that right now with you.
I'm sorry, Delmy. I feel bad.
Were you just busting my chops? Really? Serious?
Yes, but I'm trying to do that in an encouraging manner.
Here we go. Okay. All right, here we go. I'm gonna do, can you see my screen? Oh, okay, thank God for, I hope Big Mark doesn't come right now and say, chiming in right now and say, excuse me, this is the FDA calling. All right, so the issue, well, I'm gonna talk through it. So the issue here was that during a meeting, okay, women's meeting, it's the senior pastor speaking, and literally, Daniela lost control of herself, and she literally disrespected the senior pastor, Pastor Daniela. So here we go. Reverend Daniela lost her temper, raised her voice, yelling. She was literally yelling. She started to yell and started questioning and disagreeing with everything her senior pastor said. Loretta paused, and she literally took a deep breath and just decided to end the meeting. There were about 70 women there. And then Loretta brought Daniela into the church's office because, she had noticed the pattern, but there wasn't, women have a tendency to just kind of absorb things differently. So she was very cautious and just kind of observing. She brought her into the office, and Daniela became really agitated, and she was literally screaming even more at Pastor Loretta. And that's when everything went loose. Adam, to your point, to your question, she told her, listen, you have no authority here. We're equal now. You're not my senior pastor. We see eye to eye. I don't see you as my pastor. The only pastor that I see is your husband. Really, we're equal. I have look at this, I have a district license. And she had called her into the office. She was screaming to the top of her lungs. And the climax was when she really felt offended and insulted that her senior pastor called her into the office. And it wasn't even a calling into the office. It was more, let's talk about it. And she was pleading with her. She was saying, please calm down. I love you. You understand? She said, I love you like 600,000 times. Can you please just calm down? Let's talk this through. And she didn't want to. They tried to stop her. She tried to stop her at the door. And she said, and then Pastor Loretta said, listen, if you open that door, if you leave now, something will break. I love you. Let's walk through this. She said, absolutely not. And then, she called her husband. He was outside. She felt offended and no longer wanted to attend the church. So this is the gist. So it got really out of control. A lot of, and they're beautiful people, these 4 generations of women, but they all have something called pride. It's in there, and they've even admitted it. There's pride in them, and it's my way or the highway. Very strong women, very strong. But the test here was, now you're in ministry. You're not, Adam, you work in corporate, you lead people, right? You do different things, but that's different. Now, if you're going to go for ministry, that's something different. I think this was a big test for her. So this is what happened. Any questions on this? Did it make sense? Okay. I'm trying to do the notes master here. I'm telling you, wow, this is unbelievable. Now it's looping. All right, here we go. I'm not even gonna do that. I'm just gonna go ahead and do the slides. I was gonna do the notes because I have all the notes, but I'm not even gonna worry about that right now. Okay, so I took the practical theology cycle and I kind of put it this way, just to kind of see what is going on, why is it going on, what ought to be going on. We know what this is, right? And what is going on. So here, Daniela is definitely disconnected from all church activities that is directly related to her co-lead senior pastor. And even with her, keep in mind, even with her, Daniela's, Loretta's husband, complete disconnection. Loretta is frustrated with Daniela's attitude and disconnect. So the tension really begins to escalate at every meeting and church activity between both ministers. So it starts to escalate, a lot of questioning, because I asked, so how was it before this tsunami, right? How was your relationship? They started to get distant. Loretta would call her, hey, Rachel, how you doing? I'm fine. Or just wouldn't respond after that, just a text message. That is what's going on. Why is it going on? Since Loretta received her district license, she might have expected to have more responsibility, right? If we look at why is this going on, she's like, okay, I'm a district licensed person now. I should have more responsibility. And she thought she was going to do that, especially in the women's ministry. Why is it going on? I think also maybe Loretta should have checked in more earlier, even though she called, she texted, she tried to reach out, but it didn't work. Maybe there was something else that she could have done that she didn't do. So that's why is it going on? So definitely, I think it's because Loretta, she had a district license. She's like, okay, maybe there wasn't enough attention from maybe the senior pastor should have just said, hey, okay, these are the expectations, even though they were given to her, but it's particularly in the women's ministry, she wanted to chime in more. And what ought to be going on? So maybe Pastor Loretta could have given Daniela more responsibility after she received the district license. But knowing that she's very problematic, it was almost like, if she started to do that, I think, because speaking with Pastor Loretta, it was like, that would have been a tsunami. But as a senior pastor, let the tsunami happen. That's why you're the senior pastor and kind of just, you have that responsibility and you should have that maturity. Definitely Daniela should have been more submissive and respect her church authorities. Maybe Pastor Loretta could have had monthly touch points with Daniela after she received a district license and giving her a feeling of inclusion. So that's the submission and the humility component in all this. So I'm going to go on. And how might we respond? Pastor Loretta should have responded with an attitude of servant leader. What does that mean, right? This could have avoided her to bring Daniela into the office. I think when she saw that she was so upset, the tipping point was saying, I'm calling her in, like if she felt like she was on timeout. And she was so kind to Daniela, but she was like, she didn't see that. She was just, how dare you call me into the office? I am not inferior to you anymore. This was quote unquote, I am your equal. And to her pastor, she says, you are a nobody. You are a nobody. So it's got it, she started to say things that she didn't mean, probably. So maybe Loretta should have definitely probably brought her in, even though she's conflicted, because it's all about conflict, right? At the end of the day, this is all conflicts. Probably should have stepped in a little more. Daniela definitely should have been more submissive and respectful, and she should have spoken up to, even if she couldn't talk to her, she should have told her husband and said, listen, I'm not feeling included. I'm not feeling that Loretta is not letting me do anything. But maybe she feels she couldn't because this is the pastor's wife, who's also an ordained minister. So it's kind of tricky. And both ministers needed to confront the situation in its early stages with humility, submission, and love. That's how we could have responded. So the big question here was also, does she get ordained? Does she get recommended? Does this go to the DS? And this was a conversation that both senior pastors were like, no, this is where humble and humility and love comes in. Who are we to stop this because of a miscommunication, and a misunderstanding. So, and this was brought back and forth. There were people within the district like, no, I would have called her in. I don't care if this is going to be the type of leader if she's going to get ordained. How is she going to lead a church? But I think we all make mistakes. So it was kind of like, where do you go from here? Because it was not just ordination within a year after this happened. To make a long story short, she is now an ordained minister of the church where she's at. The relationship is definitely not the same. Something broke completely. And that's what happened. So it was pretty, I've seen a lot of cases. This was a sticky one because it was like, what about ordination? Does she, do we take her to the DS? Do we do this? Do they do that? And then, or once other people found out about it, leaders in the church were like, she should not be ordained. How dare she speak to her senior pastor like this, an offender. By the way, Pastor Loretta did share that she had never cried so much in her life. She had never felt so offended. I mean, except when, somebody died in her family, but it was really, really bad. So that's kind of the story. It's pretty intense because it talks about future lives in ordination. But what do you guys think about all this when you're thinking about Pastor Loretta and Daniela, a very, very strong person? Do you have questions for me?
I can see how, just a comment, I can see how ordination would be a difficult thing to navigate. I mean, I guess it would depend on the attitude of repentance, I guess, towards that situation. I mean, it wasn't the right choice to make. Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Going forward, I guess that would have depended a lot on her after the mistake. That's really tough. That's my comment, not really a question.
Yeah. And that was the tough part, because now you had people, by the way, there were people outside the room. There were 3 women in leadership who were very strong women who heard the whole thing, which was good for Pastor Loretta because they were witnesses. They were witnesses because they were with her when after she called the meeting to an end. They stayed because she was like just trying to see what was going on. And then when Loretta took Daniela, I believe, into the office, they stayed back and they heard the screams. They heard everything. And they called Loretta's husband, who had just finished the meeting. And so he came in, but he stayed outside of the office, and he also heard. But thank God there were other people there as a witness to Loretta's, because, this senior pastor, and this is the wife of the lead pastor. It could have, it would have been like her word against the other one. And eventually what happened, out of the 3 women in leadership, 2 worked really closely with her because of missions. So there was definitely a change in them. One of them stepped down and actually told Loretta, listen, and they know they're wrong because she actually said it to them. Listen, I just, after what happened, and Daniela is so upset, and I just, it was a mess. 2 of the 3 women, so there was a consequence for all this. People got hurt, and it was hard. That whole ordination thing. What do you do? And I'm on a task force with all this, so I'm giving you pseudo everything, as you know, as we have to do. But these are the kind of things. This is pretty touchy. What would you have done if you were Loretta and Adam? You're the senior pastor, or you're in a leadership position, which you are in your church. What do you do with that? And her attitude, from what I know now, everything's broken. She's still very arrogant, not respectful. She's still in that church, but it's not good. It's how much love and mercy and submission can you do from this end, right? And keep getting hammered. I don't know. What do you guys think? I would love to hear what you guys have to say.
So I've got a few. I'm trying to organize them in my head. In this context, ordination is a title, and I don't say that to minimize the position, but church leadership exists regardless if somebody is licensed or ordained or anything like that. So in a sense, Danielle is right. You are my equal, but not for the reason that you think she's your equal. Everybody is equal in the eyes of God, like this, and we're to operate like we shouldn't put pastors on pedestals. We shouldn't put lay people on pedestals. Like we're all in this together, and we all have different roles to play and things like that. So when you say Pastor Loretta should have responded with an attitude of servant leader, I question that one a little bit. So if I understand correctly, this breakdown happened in a meeting with you mentioned like 70 other women in the room.
Mm-hmm.
How what is Loretta supposed to do in that situation other than let's go somewhere private and discuss this, because doing it in front of people is not going to end well for anybody.
Right.
So now, if you want to talk like earlier behavior, like interacting with her earlier, things like that, there's a case to be made for that. Certainly you're privy to more details than we're privy to, but I would argue that she did the right thing in taking her out of that context and trying to reason and things like that. Now that being said, now I know I called ordination a title, but it's a very important title, and I in my shoes, I don't like passing judgment, but
this is good.
I would question ordination at that time. If this was a once off, like it happened, and then she had an attitude of repentance afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, but as you presented it, it had a lead up where things were off, and then there was a tipping point, and it doesn't seem like there was any change of behavior for the positive afterwards. So there's nothing saying you have to be ordained in a certain amount of time. Like you can have a district license your whole life if you really,
and you might not even pass. We have people that totally go back 7-10 years in, and they don't get ordained.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm curious to know more about what went on in that particular context. But that's almost a side point. Like ordination is almost the last thing this use case needs. The first is the relationship between the two women. First and foremost, these are, as I'm frequently reminded by my wife when I'm aggravated at other lay people in my church. We're all going to spend eternity together. We got to get along somehow. Right? And that, yeah. First and foremost is the relationship. Secondary to that is the professional relationship. And at the very, very bottom of the list is the ordination question in my mind. But that's just my take on it.
I would be really curious about her motivations to be ordained. I mean, everyone's going, oh, I feel called. Like, what does that mean for you? What is your motivation for obtaining your ordination? I mean, you mentioned earlier there's a lot of issues with pride. So I would wonder, like, really digging down deep into the root motivation of her wanting to be ordained. Is it because she wants to be an equal? Like, does she feel inferior to begin with? Or like, what is driving her to have that? Because I mean, I've known ministers my whole life, and they are lay ministers, and they are phenomenal and amazing. Like, what is prompting her to seek that ordination is what I'm really curious about. So
yeah, and that's a great question, and thank you both. Yeah, so as far as with definitely what Daniela did is to just end the meeting was definitely the right thing to do. I mean, gosh, if that would have happened in front of everybody, it would have been a nightmare. So she was already when I say tracking for ordination, just to be clear, she was already approved.
Okay.
Ordination.
Gotcha.
I failed to mention that. I'm going to put that in my slide if it comes up, because this changes everything. And she was approved. So here it is. Here's the situation. Definitely had pastoral calling. Definitely you can. I mean, she went through everything, all the testing and all the interview processes. And New York Metro is pretty intense, and I would have to say that with pride in a way of really scrutinizing, as it should be every district, because this is like this is once in a lifetime that you do this, and once you do it, it's an amazing. It's like giving birth, right? You have 1 or 2 kids. It could be twins that come out at the same, but it's that one event, right, at that moment. The same thing is with this. It's and you definitely. This was the issue. Okay, this happened, completely disrespect. She's gonna be ordained in a few months, and here's the big issue. And just even the level of arrogance. It's and even now it's still there. And the question is, gosh, should she have been ordained maybe at this point? Because and also ordination in ministry is a big deal. You know, that's kind of where you take that oath to say, I am gonna take it, if you get to that point. Some may not, but that's the big question here, and very painful for everybody. But it hurt a lot of people in the process. What do you guys think that the senior pastors could have done different from, seeing the tension? By the way, the senior pastor was well aware. Then, Loretta's husband was very much aware from the get that, Loretta was telling her husband, look, I'm noticing something, it's just breathing patterns, but I'm noticing, but it's okay, because Daniela has had monthly touch points with her senior pastor, who's the lead pastor. So, what do you think could have been done different from the pastoral care side?
Hindsight's always 20/20 in this. I mean, you presented that she did try to reach out a few times, and not gotten response back. Matthew 18's pretty cut and dried on this, that if you have an issue with somebody, you confront that person, and if that does not get you anywhere, then you bring, to or more, and there's a progression there.
Mhm.
I don't think the question of ordination doesn't doesn't change. Maybe, the timing does, but
Mhm.
yeah, I'm without digging too much into Loretta, it's tough to say if she could have done more other than
Yeah. Yep.
just more of what she already did, I guess.
Agreed. And I'm glad you said that, because that was something that was discussed. Because this is a pretty big deal, right? And
Mhm.
the fact that I'm talking touch points every other week, every 3 weeks, then
Yep.
they start to get very short, cut and dry, just not good. They did have a reconciliation meeting, all four. The pastor, Loretta's husband, called everybody in. It was probably like, I think, 3 or 4 months later, there was a reconciliation, there was forgiveness. They say they loved each other, but something broke completely. Never ever was the same. And that's and with senior in ordination processes, when somebody becomes ordained, a lot of times it's best, unless they have an on-staff full-time ministry in the church where they need to go and do their own thing. I think that was one thing that was a mistake, because there was such a close relationship.
Yeah.
This is what happened. That's what broke, because she stayed on. She didn't go out. And she's like, I'm going to stay here. You can't have two captains, and she learned from the master, right? Her pastor, and she was beautiful relationship there with both of them. And we just went and we saw how it went south. So maybe that's one of the things. If you get ordained, and if there's not going to be really an assignment for you, I think this is what happens, because there were expectations. So I think on the pastor's part, it was more like, hey, you could have maybe encouraged her, but you can't really do that either. What are you going to say? Hey, Rachel, when are you leaving? Or like, how can, you can't do that either. But
Well, you can. I mean, to borrow business terminology, like I manage a team, and
Mhm.
if somebody on my team is struggling, it's on me to discuss that with that team member, but also to set expectations. Like, if you're committed to this, this is what I need you to do. And if you're not on board with that, then we can discuss alternatives, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm not
agreed.
sure how
And
you
that's
put
what
that
he
in
did. He
theological
did.
terms, but
Yeah, no. And this was done. It was the one-on-ones every month,
yeah.
just having those touch points. And each time she was asked, Daniela, do you want to stay? Do you have, we can talk to the DS. Nope, I'm staying. Nope, I'm staying. So everything was status quo until,
Right. So
this went on
the
for about a year and a half.
first half of that statement's great. Are you on board? Are you staying? The second half needs to be then, if you're on board, I need you to do this.
And they did.
Yeah. Okay.
It's on paper, because this pastor just
Oh.
takes notes, writes everything down. If
Yeah.
this was brought to on trial, I mean, I'm talking great relationship. It went like, hey, these are the next steps. Sending you to courses, do this, do that. Do you want to go to seminary? Maybe get a master's degree. It was those touch points, because they're developmental. And he has this with every one of his leaders to see, where are you, Rachel? What can I do to help you to get to your next step? And
Yeah.
if you're going to get ordained, where are we going to fly to?
Yeah.
And let God
Yeah.
be the pilot. So
And
just kind of just putting that in context.
maybe this is a question for Dr. Blevins, but I understand in the ordination process that even up until like the night of, there's the possibility that you might be asked to wait another year.
Yes, there's no guarantee for advancement of ordination until the district board of ministry makes that determination. So it doesn't matter how long you are in licensure. It's actually the discernment of the Board of Ministry for the district who finally makes the final determination whether or not to extend, not to move you into, to recommend you for ordination. And at that point, it's actually, if memory serves me, it's also a part of the act of the assembly. So it's, until the hands are laid on, you are not ordained. That's the best way to say it. So that's just part of that journey. I am going to jump in for a second. Didn't know if you guys got held up starting. Are you kind of at the end of the debrief at this point? Just checking on time. Okay, just a reminder to be done. Be done here so that you can be back in my room by 8:15. So I'm assuming there's a second presentation. Is it Rachel or Adam? Just curious. Okay, Adam. Okay. All right. Okay, so you can keep talking for a couple more minutes. I mean, I didn't mean to show up and say leave, but make sure you give a moment to take a break, get the PowerPoint shifted over and be ready to go again. Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, doctor.
All right. I'll see it on I'll watch it on video before it's over. So we'll see you guys.
Oh gosh, yes. Great.
I remember Dr. Dewar telling the assembly once that he always has one final interview with the ordination candidate, and he has at times recommended one more year at least.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and thank you guys. I think the debriefing has been great. I just wanted to see your perspective, from that optical lens, just looking at the situation, checking in all the dots. These pastors are pretty on point, and as far as keeping the really think about spiritual formation and character formation and development. So this is where the shocker came in. Wow, maybe the senior pastor should have checked in with the husband, Loretta's husband checked in with Danielle and said, listen, I kind of, because she's problematic. So she is almost like that's the case study we had, kind of like, gosh, maybe I don't want to say anything and open up a can of worms.
Yeah.
I think that was the miss. That was the miss. He was like, it's okay, she's blah, blah, blah. No, I think it would have confronted, because it cost a lot of pain for a lot of people. So sorry, guys, I took so long to get this going. And thank you for your patience.
Don't apologize.
No,
Don't
that's
apologize.
awesome.
You're amazing.
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Was that Daniela's home church? Was that where she was raised?
So she became a Christian. She's been a Christian, I think, about 18 years. No, so yeah, it is her church. It's her home. That's where she got saved.
Okay.
In that church. And her husband, her brother is also a Church of the Nazarene pastor in another area. But so it's a miracle story. Amazing woman, but in that sense, I don't know what happened. Any more questions? Does it look good, guys? Does the case study look good? You like it?
Yeah.
You
I like
approve?
it. That's a good case study.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the way it's laid out, it's okay?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. We'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you.